cool. Maybe are we live? Let's see. Looks like we're live. Good to go. Hey everyone, welcome back to the live stream. This is the first live stream of 2022. I have a hot chocolate here because it is cold in Toronto right now. Marshmallows, fun. Yeah, it's cold in Toronto right now. It's like -20 outside. I have the heater behind me. I may have to turn it on if it gets especially cold. But what I thought I would do is I'm gonna open up the mail first today because I think people who sent stuff would be interested to see it, and that way also people can kind of stream into the stream, and then yeah, we can do some question and answer, talk about some videos I've done recently, probably talk about some transit news in the world, and wow, that's really not very nice. What can I say? Sometimes people have to move. That's the reality of life. Is that hot chocolate with milk or water? Maybe I sound horrible for doing this, but I've for the longest time been a water person. So yeah, it's water. What can I say? Let me open up. Yeah, so I'm gonna open up the mail and then do the usual stuff, Q&A, etc. Indeed, the title of today's stream is my future in Toronto. So I think that will come up in discussion at some point, and I'll respond to some chats and lot to do. So let's start by opening mail, and I'm gonna try to do my best to not totally butcher these envelopes and stuff, but apologies if I do, because it can sometimes be a little hard, and someone really does need to send me a letter opener. I don't have one. Let's see. I'm not going to read names off, but I'm sure people will know whether it's something they sent, and that way I don't dox anyone who doesn't want it. There's also a lot of these have letters incorporated into them, which I will read, though I won't read them on stream. So that's just a note. If you want to send me something, there is a link in the video description. And there's also a link to the next stream going on if you're interested in that. So the first thing is an Oyster visitor card, which is quite interesting. I didn't realize there was one of these, but this is quite cool, and this is something that I wish Toronto had, obviously. So put this here, and wow, we have, maybe I've made a mistake, but it seems we have a lot of mail this time around. Yes, so this is some stuff from Perth, Australia. So tickets and fare guide, quite interesting. Pretty serious. Reasonable prices. A little map with very, very much concentric zones. Could not be any more perfectly circular, but interesting. And, ooh, everyone's favorite thing, a card. And this is the Smart Rider card from Perth. Thank you so much for sending this over. Let's continue along. This is, I'll list off where these packages are from. Again, I'm just opening the mail at the beginning of the stream today, and then I'll get into the usual stuff. Again, if you want to send me mail, link in the video description. So yeah, let's open this up. This is from Indonesia, so it should be super interesting. Much appreciation for sending this. Staples are tricky though, I will say. Open this up. So these are a bunch of different fare cards and tickets from across Indonesia. And a lot of these are very, very interesting. It's quite a hardcore ticket here. Let's see. And there's a number of other things. Various tickets and the like punched across Indonesia. Trans-Jakarta busway. Very cool. I will do video on Jakarta eventually. As I've said many times, big fan of the MRT there. So that is awesome. Let me put this down. This one is from Oklahoma City. So let's open that up. People are still coming in. So yeah, if you're not aware, because you're not in Toronto, which a lot of people are not, it's currently negative 20 degrees Celsius, roughly, in Toronto. So it's cold. Ooh. A Lynx Pass. Oh, Sunrail tickets. And the Oklahoma City streetcar tickets as well. Very cool. I have quite the ticket collection at this point, so it's always fun to add something new to it. This is from, need to look, I'm forgetting where this is from, but I will take a look and we will see. Let me open this up. Again, opening them up off camera so that I don't dox anyone accidentally. Ah, yes, Ireland. This is the Irish Rail ticket. This is a Transport for Ireland Leap card here. And a nice letter, which I will read, but not on screen. This is from London. Though it is a very much a non-London thing, it is a Macau pass for the LRT in Macau, which is very much not an LRT by my definitions, but definitely proves my point about the description of what LRT is in various places. I'm almost done going through the mail, so if you're wondering, this mail run-through will be done shortly, which is good because about 10 minutes into stream is when these things usually start officially, let people stream in. Always like starting anything a few minutes after when it's actually supposed to start so that people who are late can come join. This is from, I should have said, ooh, I'm actually not sure 100%, though I will open this up and we will find out shortly. Ah, yes, from Italy, okay. Tickets from Milan and across Italy, as well as from some other locations, so this should be interesting to see. Let's open this up. It's always one of the most interesting parts, and I'm not like a postage stamp nerd or whatever, but seeing all the different national carriers, like mail carriers, is quite interesting. So this looks like it's from Genova. It's very cool. This is one of the more interesting and mixed ones. Metrobus Roma, so Rome, and it's got a penguin on it, which is kind of interesting. I don't know the association. Tren Nord. These are from, not sure where. It probably says on here, and I'm not sure that is a place name and not just a word that I don't know. And so, yeah, I feel a bit foolish. Some Milan urban tickets. There's several of these for different locations within Milan. And then let's look at this. Ooh, this is cool. Not sure. I will read and figure out exactly where these are from. Possibly Milan. Here, someone maybe can comment if they know where they're from. But I will read the letter after, and then I will know for certain where they're from. Let's open this up. This comes from San Francisco. Oh yes, this is very cool. Okay, this is awesome. So this is a little bit of like art and stuff. Let me open this up. That's been sent to me from San Francisco. Let's take a look at this. Oh, this is so cool. Okay, so these are vinyl stickers that you can put on your transit card, which I currently have one, and so I probably won't use these on that, but I'll put these on something because they're awesome looking. They have little LRVs on the front of them, as well as the Muni text on them. So those are awesome. And then there's like this sticker sheet, which is pretty cool. I'll show you in a second here, of all of these different models of rolling stock from San Francisco. And then we have the just wider Bay Area. And then here we have a bunch of BART and what appears to just be standard buses and San Francisco icons here on this one. So these look quite cool. Thank you so much for sending these, and let me see where they're from. It says here, so I'll say it's from Joseph from Transit Supply, so you can look Transit Supply up online. They sent me these, and yeah, they're pretty awesome. Like, I'm looking at them. Obviously, I didn't pay for these, but the quality is really feels good. They're like matte stickers. So yeah, I'll probably put these on my laptop. I mean, it's always nice to have something like that to give your laptop, which is otherwise quite boring, a little personality. Oh, and this is from Singapore. So let's see what's in here. I don't think this has been opened yet, and I just tore it open. So let's see. So yes, this is so cool. These are some different like route bus service guides, and they give the distance between stops, which is quite interesting. So these are awesome. I believe there's probably, I think there may be something else in here. So let me just check. Okay, no, that's all good. Cool. So that's all of the mail for today. There was a lot of stuff because I haven't streamed since like the middle of December. So it's been like a month since I did, a regular live stream. I had Jonathan English on last time, the doctor of transit, so to speak. And I think I'll have more streams in the future with people who are not myself on the stream. And I think people enjoyed that. So if you did enjoy that, let me know in the chat. And yeah, I have to go through all these messages now. Okay. Well, not everyone is incredibly nice in the chat today, but that is okay. Most people are. Let me see. Vancouver is currently like about 30 degrees warmer than Toronto. Vancouver, such a nice city. Let's see. How are you this afternoon? It's currently night in Toronto, so I'm well, but it is a night. We do have to turn the AC on here in Toronto too in summertime. Nice door, thank you. These are the posters that are behind me in the videos from All Things Transport, and yeah, you can kind of get a sense of what they look like. I think they're quite nice. I'm just going to go through the chat, and then I can talk about some non-chat topics. You have your own merch, indeed. So this is a sample. This is not final, but there is final merch actually available on the YouTube channel now. You can help support the channel that way. Obviously, there's a lot of ways to help support the channel at this point, and the reason for that is just because different people are interested in different things. And so there's a lot of ways you can support the channel. Patreon, YouTube memberships, merch if you want to wear something. We're going to have different designs and stuff. I of course, I wanted to actually order it, so I ordered the stuff myself to see, and it's a respectable quality. It's not like luxury goods quality, but yeah, it seems like quite sturdy, and unlikely to just tear. And so, yeah, I'm pretty satisfied with the quality. So yeah, I have that now. And of course, just watching stuff is also huge support in helping me get the message out on transit and the like. And I have some deep thoughts in today's stream. I watch a lot of YouTube myself, and one thing I've really enjoyed, one of the YouTubers I really enjoy a lot, has been doing more and more not more and more streams, but they stream every week on Fridays. I'm of course on Saturdays every other week. But they've started to do more and more just like Q&A and like, down to earth. And I think it's great. It's a good way to have a conversation with people that you wouldn't otherwise be able to have. If you spoke Catalan, I think you might like Barcelona. Australia is nice. Yeah, I've said before, if there's a great opportunity for me to move there, I would consider it. Okay. Snowing in Georgia. Oh my goodness. Yeah, apparently there is a storm moving up north, so maybe we're gonna get hit with that soon. I don't think I'm gonna start a Twitch channel. I started a TikTok account, as people probably saw, and some people really flipped out on YouTube. I don't know why. I'm not obviously changing really anything. On Instagram and TikTok and stuff, I'm just kind of posting the content that makes sense for those platforms. It's not replacing YouTube. It's not doing anything. And the thing I noticed was one of the TikTok things I posted without me sharing it anywhere else is at like 60,000 views. And that's the type of thing that makes me feel like, yeah, making a TikTok account makes sense, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of people on there, and I just direct people, hey, come look at the YouTube channel or look at stuff I'll show, and maybe I can teach people something about transit, and maybe they can learn something, and I think that'd be great, right? Like, at the end of the day, I just want to spread the good news of transit around the world, and talk about why it's so great and why it's so important, and how we can design it to be better, and transit around the world, so that we have lots of ideas and we can think about lots of different forms of transit. And so that's why I made the account. Yeah, I don't think it's a big deal. It's kind of natural when you're doing this stuff seriously to try to get more eyes on your channel. Hello from Florida and Seattle. I'm sure it's not nearly as cold there. I have visited Vienna, and I really like Vienna, but I did think through my thinking Paris has the best public transport pretty seriously. And to say that something has the best public transport doesn't mean that other public transport isn't really good, and it doesn't mean that every element of Paris's public transport is the best. Certainly, there's a lot of stations in Paris which are in, to put it kindly, rough condition. So there's ups and downs to every system, but when I made the video, and I would say still now, I think Paris has the best blend of different transit around the world. Move to Singapore and make it a base of travel throughout Asia's mass transit systems. That's actually very tempting, to be honest, but again, it's all kind of what opportunities come up. I'm not looking to move across the world right now, but I'll explain more later. Does most of your audience come from the US or Canada? Neither, actually. My audience is pretty global. There's large numbers from Canada and the United States, but a lot of people are from other countries. There's a lot of countries with 1% of my viewership, which I like. I don't want to be just an American transit channel or a Canadian transit channel. I enjoy talking about stuff in Canada and the United States, but at the end of the day, I think that for almost anything like transit, you have to have a more global perspective. I'm under no illusion that we have the greatest transit in the world in Canada or the United States. I also don't believe we have terrible public transit in every place. I think we have some good transit systems, and we certainly do some things well, but there's a lot of stuff out there in the world that's just incredible, and so that's why the channel's always been so global, or at least why it's become more and more global as I had the ability to do more and more global stuff. me keep going through the chat. Hello from Markham. Hello. I have visited Lisbon, but I did not ride much transit, I will say. A video idea I liked from Twitter is your ideal vision for transit in the GTHA. Yeah, I'm thinking about that quite seriously, so stay tuned. How big should a metro for a city of 200,000 be? To cover the entire city, I had to do over 200 stations. You probably shouldn't be building a metro for a city of 200,000. I have a video coming next week on a certain gadget bond that does cover cities of that size, that is a metro. So stay tuned for that. But I think that if you're a city of that size, it probably makes sense to do maybe something like what Karlsruhe did, or do something like, like it doesn't make sense to have 10 lines of equal capacity. You probably want to have some trunk lines with higher capacity and some feeder lines with lower capacity. I do have an O-Train ticket. Do you have an Opal card? Yes, I do. Apparently, I equal Creative Commons. Peace out. I'm not sure what that means. Do you have a list of cards that you're looking for? I don't think I have. Is it Navigo from Paris? I don't think I have a Navigo card. A lot of cards in Japan, is unfortunate as this is, I had a lot of cards from Japan, and most of them have been lost when I did a move. I know. So if you have cards from Japan, like from cities that are not Tokyo, basically, anywhere, Osaka, Kyoto, Sapporo, Yokohama, any of these cities, then yeah, send them my way. I actually haven't followed the RegioTram too much in Bogota, but I did mention it in my Bogota video, so maybe I will do something specific. I don't think my hair is that crazy right now. It's been crazier in the past. Stop talking about different cities you're moving to, see their transit systems. You need time out from making your videos. I'm not sure what you necessarily mean, but at the end of the day, moving doesn't only have to do with my YouTube channel, but I also believe that living in different places is very different than traveling. But at the same time, it's not an easy time to travel, but I'll talk more about the moving stuff later. Whoa, okay, I just got knocked to the bottom of the chat. Jordan says, hey dude, are you moving? I will talk about it later, but the second part I can address right now. Do you ski? I used to ski an absolute ton. Also, thanks for the super chat, Jordan. Super appreciated. I used to ski a lot. I used to be very much hardcore skier. And when I say hardcore, I mean, you know, I had a ton of gear. I was skiing every weekend. I was going on giant trips, skiing all over the place, you know, across North America and other places. Backcountry skiing, all of this stuff. And then I had an injury, unfortunately. I skied like for the first 18 years of my life because my father was a huge skier. I started skiing when I was maybe 4 or 5 years old. And for the first, I don't know, 13 or 14, well, for 14 or 13 years, I was skiing a ton every winter. Got injured really badly a few years ago, and I don't ski anymore. Maybe someday I'll pick it up again, but that's to be determined. But yeah, I was a huge skier, and I still consider myself passionate about skiing, even though I feel like I'm kind of a little out of it now. I do sometimes wonder if I got a pair of skis, would I be able to ski? But I think it's kind of like riding a bike with skiing. Once you've done it a lot, you can just put a pair of skis on, and yeah, you'll be a bit rusty, but you'll be able to pick it up quickly again. I guess I should mention like my favorite ski hill. I'm a really big Jackson Hole fan. Is it Corbett's Couloir? But whatever. The run that goes right next to the main tram is really cool. Also, side note, I really like someday I will make a video about Switzerland and maybe like France, talking about the ski area transit systems. It ties in with gondolas, but also like there's trains involved sometimes and really unique gondola systems. It is niche and not necessarily mainstream to transit. Like I do think gondolas, etc., they definitely have a role to play, but I think that there's a lot of technologies that are very skiing focused that would be interesting to talk about just because they're cool. So that'll be a future video for sure. Hot chocolate is good, but not that hot at this point. What are the benefits of streetcars versus a trolley bus? They could be potentially larger, easier to operate because they're on rails, probably lower maintenance. They can't climb hills as well. So those are the things I would say. You can do different things with rails as well. Toronto Transit Channel is asking, wait, which agency? I'm not sure what the question is necessarily. Reece, do you play chess? Not for a long time. Have Marco Chitty on. I would love to have Marco on the channel. I feel like I'm not going to do any remote streams where I have people on because internet connections can make things a bit rough. I might at some point, but I need to do some practice and stuff, and YouTube has me incredibly busy. And so I will probably that may happen at some point, but in the future. But I would love to have Marco on. I think that'd be really fun. I've answered that already. Hi from Singapore. Hi. Hey, what do you think about the Prague Metro? It's good. Actually, I have a special connection with the Prague Metro. Let's just say that a movie I really liked featured it quite heavily. So we could say that. I would love to see more guests on the show. I will definitely bring more on. Is there any chance he'll do a video about Manila soon? I wouldn't say soon, but I will do one for sure. And it comes up, right? Like I mentioned Manila's light rail. One of the lines is light, or maybe, I forget if it's multiple lines, but then there is the LRT that's like a full subway. What is the meaning of the disclaimer at every live stream? Is it after the Dr. English collab? Can you explain what you mean by that? I mean, in the description. Well, give me a second. I want to make sure my audio is not on so I don't set anything off here. Let me take a quick look because I'm not sure what you're referring to. And so maybe if I look, I can determine what this disclaimer is. Let's look at the last stream, maybe. Just my Karlsruhe video is popping up here. Interesting. I've never gone to my YouTube channel when I'm streaming because I'm not watching videos, I am streaming them. So let's see if I can find streams here. Oh, this is gonna be a bit annoying. Let's find a stream. Where is the stream we did? Okay, here it is. The disclaimer. Let's see. It's gonna be down here. Oh, any opinions on the channel are our own and do not represent the views of our employers. Yeah, so that's just kind of like a standard social media disclaimer from when I was working at a company as a transport planner. I'm not anymore, but I feel like it's fine to leave it there. It's kind of good. It's just my opinions I'm sharing. I'm never sharing anyone else's opinions. Is it 100% cotton? That I'm not sure of. It'll definitely say on the website, though. I imagine it is, besides, of course, the print itself, which is not. Could do some Iceboat Station merch. Good idea. That's a very good idea. If you don't know what Iceboat Station is, first of all, follow me on Twitter. I have been going on about Iceboat Station quite a bit, but that is a great idea to do some merch about that. Basically, my personal project for the year is to advocate for there's a station in Toronto that is not being designed in a way that I think is rational, or at least and it's not being acknowledged the value of this station location and how important it is, I think. And so I am making it my personal advocacy project to keep making noise and saying we need to have a big station here. It's an important site. Instead of building this kind of small station that's planned. Who was the other narrator that did the Montreal videos? That always confused me. My partner, yes. What do you think about city near Jakarta and Bogor to plan to build a monorail? Probably not a good idea, but I would have to look more to have a better sense. By the way, yes, if you didn't watch the Karlsruhe video today, definitely go watch that. Thoughts on Yellowknife Transit? The fact that it exists makes me happy. Do you have thoughts on the Interborough Express announcement? I'll definitely be doing a video on it. Let me make a note, because I definitely want to do a video on it, but I don't remember if I actually put it in my list of videos to do, so let me just open this up. The list is very long and it takes a while to open. Interborough Express, let's put it, let's drop it in here. I will make a full video about that. It's a very important project. Have you visited Singapore? Yes, I have. I'll use this as my city skyline playthrough. Interesting. Please do a demystified on Bangkok. I probably will at some point in the future. Move to Jakarta? Unlikely, probably. Stayed in Toronto for 3 weeks during summer. Really loved during Christmas. Really loved the TTC. Hello from the US. Hello. Which PO box should I send transit cards? If you fill in the form for the cards, etc., then we will send you an email. So stay tuned for an email where we will provide the information. What percentage is UK? I'm going to say it's like 10% roughly. It's one of the larger ones. I do speak English, so I think that's probably part of the reason. My dog likes your voice. She settles nicely when you are on. That is very nice. How soon until intergalactic transit coverage? It might be a while until that happens. Toronto has better transit than Nottingham. Well, Toronto is a little larger, but hey, you know, Toronto isn't actually horrible for transit, though that might be more of a statement about Nottingham. Hey from a civil engineer follower in Sydney. Hey to you as well. I hope you're having a good morning. Hey Sam from the Netherlands. Hope you're having a great evening. You're up very late. By the way, next stream, which is linked in the description of this stream, that next stream is going to happen at a time that is hopefully a little more friendly to people in Europe. I know that this time it works okay for people in Asia, and it also works okay for people in like Australia, but it's very late at night for people in Europe, so I'm going to do an earlier one next time, which is in 2 weeks. If you're in Europe, it should be better. You should get Andy Byford to talk. I would love to talk to Andy Byford. If Andy's watching, let's set something up. How much freight rail can a double track railway handle while keeping passenger rail a viable option? So the important thing to realize about capacity and stuff, right, is that the main limiting factor is, you know, the time it takes for trains to go through sections of track. If you have a double track railway and you have not super long freight trains and they're pretty fast, they perform like passenger trains, then you could have a very high frequency of freight trains per hour. The issue is when you have slow freight trains and fast passenger trains on a double track railway, because your fast passenger train is going to catch your slow freight train. And so the bigger the difference, the harder it becomes to fit both passenger and freight trains on the same tracks. Because if the freight train is moving slow and the passenger train, I think that's my fridge it does this every so often. You know, you basically have a gap, and the bigger the difference, the wider the gap and the less frequency you can run. And so that's essentially how it works. I'll make a video that explains this better. But acceleration is another major issue. When you have a ton of freight behind a couple locomotives, it can take a lot of effort to both speed up and slow down your train. How would you approach implementing transit in a very sprawling, low-density city? You should check out my video I released a couple days ago about like how I would, where to start if you don't have transit type of thing. I think it describes a scenario that would apply well to that. I think canals, well, potentially very good for freight movement, are not great for passenger movement because boats tend to not be super fast, and also there's issues with water. Water makes transporting things quickly or small amounts of things less practical. Keep up the good work. Thank you. Moving to Montreal from cover picture. I did change that, I know, but okay. Once I get to the bottom of the chat, which I will do shortly, I will talk about moves and stuff like that. Are you a basketball fan? If so, do you think Van Vliet should be an all-star? I am a basketball flan. Sorry, I'm tired. I am a basketball fan, but I don't think I have any clear view on who should be all-star this year. The Mexican, any thoughts on Tren Maya? I'll probably do a dedicated video. What are your thoughts on how North American freight and passenger railways become carbon neutral? Electrify key corridors, probably battery and hydrogen locomotives. I know that hydrogen especially is kind of seen as this kind of borderline technology, but hydrogen could be great. It's one of those technologies that would probably be much more compelling if it was less expensive, but it won't become less expensive if we don't build more hydrogen stuff. So it's a matter of, I think, kind of a chicken and egg problem, but batteries are promising in different energy storage methods, especially in North America, where there are a lot of lines that go through incredibly remote places and in incredibly low density places. Obviously, overhead line electrification is ideal, but it's incredibly expensive in North America to do it, for better or for worse, and so it's going to be difficult to justify in some places. But maybe, do the main lines first, do the lines where you need the performance, mountainous areas and stuff. I think that's its own dedicated video, to be honest. But yeah, I think batteries, even if only to have the, like the Flix drive, I don't know if you've heard of Flix drive, look it up if you haven't, but there's this kind of battery. In North America, a lot of freight trains, and in other places, a lot of freight trains have multiple locomotives on them, engines, locomotives. And the Flix drive thing is basically a locomotive with a ton of batteries in it that turns the train into kind of like a hybrid, which sounds like, oh, that's still not zero emissions. Definitely not, but the alternative is losing a lot of power when you're braking, right? And trains, when they're braking, imagine, they have so much mass, so there's a ton of power to recover through braking, especially in mountainous areas, for example, and even in non-mountainous areas, because even small grades can require a lot of braking. And so I think that is a really promising thing for just massively improving energy efficiency. I'd love a video about Frankfurt Airport. I'm actually planning on doing some more airport videos to, talking about the crossover between transit and airports. I think that'll be interesting. Opinion on the Taoyuan MRT. I'm going to talk more about these in my Taipei Explained video, so stay tuned for it. Mont Tremblant, I think the ski transit systems I'd be thinking of are maybe like in Vancouver, Switzerland, but yes, I will definitely make a video about it. Thoughts on electric buses? I think they're a good option that we need to develop more, and I think that I think they're a good option. We need to develop them more to continue to improve them. Which agency were the schedules from? There was one from SPS Transit and one from SMRT. Is rail-based warehousing likely or possible in the current environment? I think it's going to become difficult. Not that it's going to become difficult. I think it's difficult for numerous reasons. I think that for freight, what we should be doing is making sure as many long-distance freight trips as possible are happening on rail, where we have the biggest gains to be made. And then work our way to shorter and shorter stuff. You're not going to be doing last mile on rail, most likely, in most cases, but start with the longer trips and work your way down. There's an immense number of trips that are very long, including in Europe. In North America, we're actually better on freight doing stuff on rail, but it's important to get those super long trips, cross-country trips that are happening on trucks. Let's get those happening on rail. Have you found any new channels or creators that you would recommend? I don't watch a ton of transit content, if I'm completely honest. So that's an interesting question. I'm just thinking if there's anyone. Honestly, yeah, I watch a lot of channels, but most aren't cities and transit related. So nothing in this space that comes to mind that's new. Which direction do you think is the correct way a pantograph faces? That is such an interesting question. Neither way, they're bidirectional. Do you need a MARTA card? I actually have one, but thank you. I also have a venture one. Any opinions on this channel are our own and do not represent the views of our employers. Yes. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. So I live between two urban areas in the UK with about 1 million people each, and there is no real transit between them other than a few bus lines and rather bad train service. That's rough, but hopefully this... Basically, it sounds like you just need to improve your service, because a few bus lines and a train service seem reasonable for that. Would you ever do a Muni video? Yeah, I will definitely do one in the future. I did my BART one only a few months ago, so I would gonna wait a while, because for places where I'm not based, and for in the scale of things, smaller regions, I mean, the Bay Area is large in the context of North America, but in the context of the world, it's not. And I've talked about the Bay Area a fair bit with my BART video, Caltrain videos, and the like. So I'll wait a bit, but I will do a Muni video at some point. What university path would you recommend for those interested in designing transit vehicles or transit stations and solutions? Honestly, if you really want to design stuff, you know, I mean, probably if you're talking vehicles, like mechanical engineering, probably. If you're there's a lot of different types of engineering, so it depends on what options are available to you. You could go like a design path. There's a lot of different potential careers in design. You're talking about stations, then maybe architecture. But if you're on the technical side, you know, you could approach it from doing CAD, like computer-aided design, that sort of thing. So yeah, you could be like me and make a YouTube channel, but you probably wouldn't actually be the person designing the stations, but you could comment on designing stations. But yeah, and for designing transit vehicles, actually for designing stations, civil engineering would be probably another good option. You moving to New York City? I am not, but again, I will talk about this in a moment. Thank you for the super chat, XXX Revolution 7049. Interesting username there. TTC Subway should share tracks and stations with Go. That's going to be impractical because the two systems use different gauges, and you could have dual gauge, which I'll probably talk about in a future video. But at the end of the day, dual gauge on a rapid transit system probably doesn't make a ton of sense. Let's just say in an alternative universe where, like, imagine that we got a Japanese company to do Go RER and the Ontario line. Maybe they would have turned out different, and maybe they would actually share rails. I can definitely imagine that. It could be a pretty interesting option, actually, when you start to think about it, especially since a large part of the Ontario line on both ends is adjacent to Go commuter rail tracks. There's a real option. You could have had the systems connect and have them do interlining like systems in Japan. It could have been really interesting. Let me scroll up and go back to where I was in the chat. What is the optimal population density for good transit? Higher tends to be better, I would say. There's transit that far north as like Yellowknife? Yes, there is. What kind of things could I do here in my city to put tram transit back on the menu? I was devastated when the plans fell through. I think that the problem is focusing too much on one mode. I mean, it depends. Like some cities, trams don't make sense. Some they do. So it really depends. If they make a ton of sense, I think you advocate on examples. So if you have similar cities to your city that have trams internationally, maybe that's a good approach to take. But yeah, you know how I feel about trams and light rail in North America being kind of overused. So Do you think Smart Track failed because they got the mode wrong? No, I do not. I think I don't think Smart Track failed necessarily. I think that it seems like a misunderstood plan and a plan that probably wasn't properly sold. What kind of things could I do here? Oh, okay, sorry, I just read that. Please do a video on Kuala Lumpur's LRT, MRT, and monorail. I will definitely do that eventually, especially because of the connections with the Vancouver SkyTrain. Would you ever make a video on how we can get more involved in transit advocacy? Probably, yes. Though follow my Twitter because I'm constantly sharing people's stuff, and many people who I follow and share on Twitter, they are doing transit advocacy. What do you think of the Durham-Scarborough LRT? Do you mean the Durham-Scarborough BRT? If so, I think it's good, but it would be great if it was faster. Should the Eglinton Crosstown be renamed the Eglinton streetcar that runs in tunnels? No comment. Will you cover future Quebec tram plans? If there are more plans, I'll definitely cover them. What's your opinion on streetcars? What makes them better or worse than alternatives like trolleybus? Oh, I already answered this question earlier in the stream. Are commuter coaches better than express bus service? I'm not sure what you're necessarily referring to. It works for night owls in Europe this time. Yeah, I suppose. I agree. Andy Byford would be great on the stream. Same with Jeff Marshall and Gareth Dennis. I'd love to get in touch with Jeff. So if you're watching, Jeff, get in touch with me. Dhaka, Bangladesh, the world's most densely populated city with 20 million people, will finally have its first MRT line. Well, saying something is the densest city in the world is difficult because it's sort of like saying something is the largest city in the world, though Tokyo probably is. Because this is a problem with talking about cities in general, is where do you draw the boundaries, right? Because depending on where you draw the boundaries, you can make the population seem bigger, you can make it seem smaller, you can make the density seem really high or really low. It just depends on boundaries. I think Hong Kong, for example, if you look at like its density overall, it probably isn't insanely high. But if you look at the density of sort of the urbanized areas, it's very high because where there is development in Hong Kong, a lot of it is very high density. It's just that there's a lot of like greenfield land that isn't developed in Hong Kong, for example. Can you make a video about quad track or double track as in Indonesia? Possibly. Can you do a video on low-cost train services like Flixtrain? I will probably do so, yeah. San Diego MTS wants an airport LRT with 15-minute headways. I think San Diego could benefit from if it's doing an airport line, do it as like an express automated metro, because I think the LRT network is already fairly congested with all of the branching and various lines, and the airport, if I recall correctly, in San Diego is quite close to the city center. So I think you could do something like a light metro that would be fast and super frequent. How old are you? And okay, let's just remove this. Just going through here. Nuclear-powered trains, interesting idea. Accessibility with an exclamation point. I'm not sure what you're referring to. I slightly disagree with your assessment on water transport. I think that canals can be used for transport a large amount of people quickly, but that requires an extensive canal network. I don't know if it can, though. I don't know if it can move that large of a number of people. You can put a lot of people on boats, but if your boats are operating very high frequency, then you have to have at least one person per boat operating them, right? And that becomes expensive. Tyson Moore says, running a mixed traffic network that satisfies both passenger and freight users is very difficult. Many countries try, but few are willing to put the effort and money in to make it succeed. I think that countries like China and India are probably kind of leading the way in terms of how, if you were going to try to do both really well, how to do it, which is basically you need separate networks for both. Because the dynamics of efficient freight and efficient passenger transport are just very different. For freight, you probably do want giant, long, maybe slower trains, and for passenger, you probably want shorter, very fast trains. Of course, it depends. Like for fast freight, maybe intermixing with passenger doesn't it makes some sense, but for bulk goods, probably not. the TTC had a work car that works on operates on batteries. Interesting. I haven't done a video on India's dedicated freight corridors. I would like to do more videos on India, but part of the problem is that there's not that much media available. And when I say media, I mean media I can actually use, ideally Creative Commons licensed or public domain imagery, because otherwise it just becomes kind of painful to try to work around the logistics of using it. There's just not a ton. And so if someone has a ton of great pictures they've taken of dedicated freight corridors projects, reach out to me on Twitter and maybe I can make something happen. But otherwise it makes it a bit difficult. Statler flirt trains were tested in Ottawa today. Very interesting and exciting. Jacob says, what are your best thoughts on what are your thoughts on the best model for organizing transit agencies? And also, thank you for being a member on YouTube. One province-wide versus region-wide versus multiple cities. I think I'm going to do a video kind of about Toronto that talks about what if we just made one giant transit agency for the whole area, because I think that is a definitely valuable question. I think it depends on your priorities. I think when you have a large regional agency, there's going to be probably more, and there's a good comparison because I'm from Vancouver where we have just that, a large regional agency. And what I would say is that it equalizes things more. So you have more of a consistent level of service across an entire region, but maybe the best service is not as good as the best service in Toronto, where Toronto itself has great service, but some other places have really bad service. So I think that's the distinction. And I will say, the case for having really high service in some places and lower service in other places is it creates a sort of competition, right? Because for a lot of people, increasingly, who want to use transit as their main mode of getting around, and I mean, as someone who has had a car in the past, it is so much more affordable to just use transit and ideally even just walk and bike around, that for me, living in Toronto is fantastic because I don't have to pay tons of money to drive a car everywhere. And so I just probably wouldn't consider moving to a lot of places because they would force me to buy a car, and that would make moving to those places really expensive. Toronto is so affordable because I don't need a car. I think it's interesting because a lot of the time it seems like a suburb, for example, might be less expensive, but you'd be surprised when you factor in the cost of owning a car, parking a car, fueling a car, insuring a car, maintaining a car, and the time you have to spend driving the car yourself, that cars end up being really expensive and unattractive. And so I think having a region where different cities can compete, maybe one city provides great transit, one city provides other benefits, and that can create pressure to improve transit services, maybe a model to, it's something worth discussing at least. What do you think of YRT's rollout of electric buses? I don't have too many thoughts. It's pretty standard in North America. There are lots of agencies rolling them out. I think it's positive, but I would like to see larger rollouts basically and a more cohesive charging strategy. Are we doing en route charging? Are we doing depot charging? How are we doing things? What do you think of Metrolinx's bike parking along the Eglinton LRT? I think that, well, I'm not actually completely familiar with what the strategy is, but I'm kind of sadly of the belief that in Toronto, outdoor bike parking is really not great. It might be okay in a low density area where there's not a ton of people going around, and that might be fine. But bike theft is a real issue here, more than I feel like it is in Vancouver, and so, I mean, the reason, I mean, I've heard so many people I know who have bikes have had their bikes stolen, and you just walk around the city and you see a lot of bikes with parts of them stolen. That I think indoor bike parking is really important, secure bike parking, and we have it in some places in Toronto, but not nearly enough. I think it's one of the things that we do not do that well, and I think it's one of the things that cities should just do what Vancouver's doing. Like if you look at the Netherlands, it's super, and I'm not saying the Netherlands doesn't do the same thing Vancouver does, but I think the cool thing about Vancouver, it's in North America. We already know how to do it, and you could buy the exact same products that Vancouver buys easily and set up the same thing in your city, is they have these basically modular, very like attractive glass structures that have a locked door on them. You tap your fare card to unlock them, and I believe there's like a deposit or something. You have to program your fare card so you have a spot, but then they have like security camera in them, so there's a lot of theft deterrence. They have some maintenance equipment inside so it doesn't get damaged. People generally take care of it, and there's a security camera so they wouldn't probably do anything crazy. And also when you tap in, obviously, you know, it's recorded probably, so you know who's tapped in and got their bikes. But then it's a glass box, so there's not the safety concern of like, oh, we have a closed dark room at our station, and they just pop them up right around stations. They're, as I said, they're modular, so they can be built really quickly. I think that's an ideal situation, and in Toronto and a lot of places where you have stations with parking lots next to them, or even just, I don't know, like a space the size of like a shipping container, you could set these things up really easily, and they have, you know, multiple level bike parking with the, you know, raisable racks and stuff. I think that's the ideal situation. I know Eglinton definitely has at least some stations with bike rooms, but let's be honest, it probably doesn't have enough. I don't think every station has one. I think every station should probably have one. At the very least, though, you have open plazas and stuff. That would be a great thing to have. And for the surface stops, where you can't fit a big bike room at the stop, it would be great if just at one corner of the intersection, near where a stop is, you just have a pad and you put it there. And that would be, I think, a fantastic solution, because in these low-density suburban areas, being able to bike to the stop would be really nice. So that's my thinking. India's double height electric freight train, anyone? Yeah, no, it's fantastic. Though we have that in North America too, just not with flat cars, with what are called well cars. I've been watching your stream for 20 minutes or so. You've convinced me you do know what you're talking about based on your impromptu answers to questions. So right on. Thank you. That's nice of you. Evolution of the network. Not sure what you're referring to. How would you connect a national park to a city? That really depends. Everything, it depends on context, right? It's so important. Is there a ton of traffic? Then we have to talk about bigger solutions. Is there a rail line that conveniently goes nearby? Because that changes things, right? So with transportation and with transit, it's highly dependent on the location you're talking about. If there's a highway, but there's no railway, well, then a bus does probably make a lot of sense, especially if the traffic doesn't demand rail. I mean, national parks in most cases probably do not have the traffic to demand rail, but I would also say that the nice thing about a bus is it can be a bit more flexible. So once you get to your national park, maybe you can do a loop and you can have multiple drop-off and pickup points, which is useful because often national parks are big spaces, and once you get dropped off, you might want to actually go somewhere else in the big national park, and having a bus that can maybe do a loop or something could be helpful. So yeah, that's what I would say for that. Do you watch the channel Not Just Bikes? For sure, and we've had some light collaborations in the past. How do you feel about bike storage and integration with public transit? I feel like I just talked about that a fair bit, so I'm going to scroll back up, and there's a super chat. So I'll say thank you. XXX Revolution sent another super chat. Thank you again. London Tube shares tracks with long-distance trains. Correct, but that's because in London, the width between the tracks is the same for the tube and the long-distance trains because it uses standard gauge. In Toronto, the subway actually has wider than standard gauge. So for the existing lines, it doesn't make a ton of sense. And also, the thing about London's network, right, is it's so gigantic that there are sections that go through lower density areas and sections with less frequent trains where it's okay and it's acceptable to have some mixing between higher frequency low frequency tube trains and national trains. But in Toronto, the subway, it does go out fairly far, but there's a lot of demand. So trains are running really frequently, and it doesn't really make sense to operate with the national network. It's also worth pointing out, and I think I mentioned this in my Tube Explained video, that the London Underground, especially the subsurface network, which is where a lot of that through operation happens, has the same loading gauge, and I'm going to make a video about loading gauge, but to put it simply, what loading gauge is, sorry, my nose is just itchy, is basically the profile of your train, right? So in the UK, there's an incredibly small profile for trains because of the early adoption of train technology in the UK. But in North America, mainline trains often have gigantic profiles because we built our railways later. The limiting loading gauge of the UK is why you don't see double-decker trains in the UK, though they did have that concept train that's quite interesting to look at, though obviously not practical. So that's basically the reason. Is they're very different, and in London it makes sense because there's legacy infrastructure and it all kind of ties together. In Toronto it just makes less sense. But again, it could have made sense with the Ontario line maybe if it was a through run of regional rail. Are you familiar with Ivan? Is this Illich? No, I am not. Do you know anything about Lithuanian railways? I do not, I admit. But I'm always happy to learn more. I did hear the unfortunate news about the CEO of MARTA. Very upsetting and sad. But yeah, I don't have much else to say. Keep going down here. Thoughts on so there is this LA trains have issues with looting and stuff. Very concerning. I think I don't have a ton to say on this issue. I don't know the context that well, besides knowing, like, having seen what happened. But I think that improved security around railways is actually really important, and I think that is one thing that maybe that's the moral of the story here. I'm not saying that would fix this situation, but even in other places, not just in North America, we don't have enough fences around railways and enough safety barriers and stuff. And I think having more fences and safety barriers, not only obviously some people will always get onto railways and they'll get into yards and stuff, but it's about discouraging people and making it unattractive and making the cost benefit for them worse. And just for improving safety, I think it's super important. So those are kind of my thoughts. I think it's important. And obviously for safety too, railways are super dangerous. So yeah. The MTA is doing a battery-operated train on the Long Island Railroad. Interesting. Toronto Transit. Oh, okay. Let me scroll down. Yeah, I mean, LA could have way better transit. There's no excuse for LA not having way better transit. Oh, that's interesting about improving the commuter rail in San Diego. I'd love to see if you have a document or something. I'd love to read about it. Is electrification included? The thing about the commuter rail, though, is does it continue? It doesn't really continue south of the city, does it? So maybe there's an opportunity if there's destinations to serve south of the city or east of the city to continue that in the future with maybe a new line, especially if you use more modern vehicles that can do tighter curves and stuff. Let me scroll down. Talking about canal transit a lot. What do you think about BC fares? I'm going to definitely do a dedicated video. I'm from BC, of course, so yeah, there'll be a dedicated one. You should go check out the new Rutherford Go underpass. I probably will. I'll be honest, I've been, with lockdown in Toronto, yes, we are back in lockdown, I've been mainly staying at home, and it's been kind of sad and unfortunate. It would be nice to get out, but again, it's like -20 out, so I'm honestly not that well equipped for that level of cold in winter. I don't have... Again, used to ski, used to have balaclavas and all of that stuff and face masks and more super cold weather stuff. I do not right now. And so going out in this weather isn't super practical. Also, it's just rough on the camera. So I will definitely go out and check these things out again, but I'll probably wait until a little more progress has been made because Rutherford's pretty far from me. Do you like or dislike Eglinton West Station being changed to Cedarville? Context is key. If we do, I like the thought behind Metrolinx's renaming scheme. 100% agree with it, makes sense. Let's do like London and Vancouver do, more neighborhood-focused names. The issue is that the TTC is obviously not on board with that because they're not renaming a bunch of other stations. We need to have a single... I think it's more important to have a single system than to have a good system. So previously I've said... and I do see there's another super chat, which I will respond to after this. I've said before, with some controversy, that other cities in Ontario should adopt the Presto fare card system, even though Presto has its problems. And it's for the same reason that I'm saying that while I like the intent behind the Metrolinx renaming scheme, the thing is, when you have, it's great if we name everything based on, so to give you context, in Toronto, traditionally, the way subway stations have been named is basically they're intersecting street. So if you have a city and it's like A Street, B Street, C Street, these are the major streets, then the subway going along that's crossing all these streets, you'd have A station, B station, C station. And the Metrolinx approach is that let's name them after like the neighborhoods. What is the neighborhood called? Right? So maybe these are different things. The problem is if you rename A station to, I don't know, Apple Estates or something, I don't know what it's going to be called, but then you still have B and C station because this is an interchange. So we're going to rename it because we're going to build a new line that connects to it. Because then it becomes very confusing. This one's Apple Estates, this one is B, this one is C. It makes no sense, right? In the same way, in Toronto, we're going to rename Eglinton West to Cedarvale, but then the station to the north is going to be called Lawrence West. And so this creates a lot of confusion. Also, we have a Lawrence East station, and we have a station. We also have a station at Kennedy, which is not called Eglinton East. Even though it's on Eglinton East, though we have an Eglinton and we have an Eglinton West, which will no longer be called Eglinton West. It's very confusing, and so we need to have a single unified system. And this is one thing that makes me so frustrated. The TTC and Metrolinx need to go into a room and figure out a solution and then adopt it for every station. So either use the street name, which, yes, probably isn't a great idea when you have, because once you start having 4 or 5 subway lines, you are going to have Lawrence East 1, Lawrence Easter, Lawrence Eastern, I don't know. It doesn't work well. So that's why the neighborhood name idea is good. You can have a neighborhood name, and underneath it can say Lawrence East and maybe the cross street, so it's a bit more clear. But yeah, that's my feeling. I'm frustrated. Yeah, so Martin points something out that's really good, which is that in Germany and in other places in the world, sometimes passenger tracks are used for freight at night, and this is an option, right? Because the operating patterns are different, and so if you have them operate during different times of day, that can work. Though maintenance has to happen at night, so that can restrict your opportunity to do maintenance or your opportunity to move freight. I don't have a ton of thoughts on the Tel Aviv light rail network. I have looked at it a little bit. I will probably do a dedicated video at some point. So I actually did talk about the Bogota Metro. Yeah, I have a dedicated video about it from a little less than a year ago, so definitely worth checking out. It's difficult, though. When you have a BRT network, transforming to something else is difficult. And Ottawa is obviously a good case study of what not to do, which is underestimate maybe the transit demand on the main route you have through your city. If the U.S. gets nationalized rail service, unlikely to happen, what trains have priority? I think that's an interesting question to ask, but if we're honest, it would probably still be freight, because the entire U.S. is oriented around the way things are today, right? And so even if passenger trains make a ton of sense, freight is what is making money today. Freight rail is critical to the U.S. And so the thing I would say that would happen if you nationalize maybe is you would open up those corridors to build parallel parallel passenger tracks. But you wouldn't probably start massively running, passenger trains on freight tracks. When did you start traveling on public transport independently? Maybe when I was like 12. Reece, and that was in New York, actually. New York was probably the first place I actually was riding around transit by myself. City I spent a lot of time in. Reece is maybe the first person to say Toronto is inexpensive. Wait, did I say Toronto is inexpensive? When did I say that? Well, Toronto is not, well, I mean, I'm speaking relative to Vancouver, where I'm from, right? But yeah, compared to like York region or other places in the surrounding area as a renter, yeah, I think it's cheaper to live in Toronto because I don't need to own a car. If I lived in York Region or Mississauga or a lot of other places, I mean, maybe if I'm not renting an apartment, if I'm renting a basement suite, I don't know how. In Vancouver, there's a lot of basement suites, but for renting like a regular standard apartment, no, I don't think it would be cheaper outside of Toronto. And yeah, I'm talking about Toronto relative to the surrounding areas where I would have to own a car. I do think it's less expensive. I've rewatched your Copenhagen Metro video. Could they update the M1 and M2 with new 4-car rolling stock, or are they limited to 3 cars? I think I mentioned in the video, but yeah, 4 cars is an option, I believe. Does Cleveland's interlining of blue and green LRT and red heavy rail between Tower City and East 55th count as tram train? It might actually, though it's such a small thing. I think you have to do something extensively to call it anything other than a peculiarity, right? Would you ever consider being part of the transit planning process for the Toronto region? Well, I already, respond to surveys, etc. Metrolinx releases a ton of stuff. TTC does as well from time to time, and I was working as a transportation planner, so I'd say I have been. Though my power is limited, we could say that. Which is better? New York City, I believe they require parking garage. Every parking garage should have bike parking. In Toronto, generally, new developments need to have bike parking. So, yeah, which is better? But bike parking can be, if you don't necessarily need. The difference is that you can build bike parking without underground parking, but building surface parking is much less practical than surface bike parking. Which is better, electric but slow water taxis or fast but diesel? I don't have a strong opinion on that. Let me scroll up quickly. What time did the stream start? 8 o'clock as usual. Evolution of the Network is a series on the YouTube channel Vanishing Underground. How do monorails switch track? The track itself moves, so it bends. It's designed to be flexible. It's not just a giant piece of metal bending. Yes. Anyways. What's your opinion on adding the Cummer station to the Yonge North subway extension now that Royal Orchard has been approved? I think that Royal Orchard probably shouldn't be built. I think that if the demand is to have that as a deep underground tunnel section, I don't think that station should be constructed. I do think Cummer would be more valuable. I may have lived on that street before, so I might be a little biased, but I think if you're demanding to have the subway deep underground, you shouldn't get a station. And I think it's even more frustrating because I have seen, I saw someone prominent say that now that we are getting our subway station, we are going to be turned into a transit-oriented community, and we need to kind of brace for impact, which is very frustrating because if you're getting a subway station, by goodness, yes, you should put up some towers and apartments because that's what you do near subways. Subways are not just a premium amenity to have in your exclusive, wealthy, single-family home neighborhood. If that's what you want, I'm sorry, that's just not, that's basically just taking from the people in terms of taxpayer dollars and giving it to people who can afford single-family homes, which are wealthy people generally. It's a no, that doesn't make sense. Yeah, in Japan there is a ton of bike parking, and often they just do it through surface parking. But in Japan, the way people act around, just the culture is so different, right? So surface parking, you don't have to worry about your bike getting stolen. In Toronto, I sadly do not think that is really the case. What do you think about turning Boston's Green Line into a tram train? It's kind of like a tram train, but I think that's exactly why I emphasized that in the... Karlsruhe is a pretty small city, right? So it makes sense. But Boston is not a tiny city, so tram trains would make a lot less sense for a city of Boston's size. Also, Boston has so many subway lines that could use extensions, and it has commuter rail that runs under electric wires. There are so many transit projects I think would probably be more valuable for Boston. I will eventually make a video about it, but yeah, Boston is one of those ones that, like Chicago, has evaded me. Which Montreal Metro line extension do you think is the most necessary? I would say let's take the Blue Line West. Blue Line has so much room and capacity, and also I believe the western end of the Orange Line is not that congested. Obviously not compared to the eastern side of the Orange Line, so I think that would be valuable. But also Yellow Line. I know the Pink Line is maybe not top of mind for a lot of people right now, but think of this. What if they built an extension of the Yellow Line for like 3-car trains, or for like 6-car trains, like the Blue Line currently operates? And they built it to be kind of like the Pink Line was supposed to be. And yes, it could probably have to be underground for a lot of it. That could be an interesting option, right? Or I think extending the Yellow Line makes a lot of sense because it ends in the downtown core. So you get the instant benefit of you get more efficient operations by extending it. You don't need the super long trains because right now it operates really infrequently. So just run shorter trains more frequently. And what you could always do if you do shorter trains for the rest of the line is you could still run longer 9-car trains between the South Shore and Barrie. So if you needed that capacity, you could alternate some larger trains in there for the shuttle service, basically. But yeah, you could do a 3 or 4 or 5 or 6-car. There's no reason we have to do increments of 3. Paris has 5-car metro trains, obviously, and you can just build 5-car metro trains. So yeah, extend the Yellow Line. I think that would be... It's valuable because obviously it connects to Barrie-UQAM, which means you have this huge hub that it's connected to, and it can provide some relief to the Orange Line's eastern section. It's lined up perfectly to do that, right? So I think that would be possibly a very valuable project. Is Minnesota the state's... Is Minnesota the state most like Canada? That's an interesting question. Maybe in some regards, yes. I'm not a huge fan of the LRT, though. It's one of the better LRTs in the States, for sure. I think there are a lot of U.S. states that share similarities to Canada, but I think there's none that is like Canada in every regard, basically. So there might be individual things, but not that much. But things that share every detail. Which system do you want to visit most after the pandemic? London, Tokyo, Paris, Seoul, so many places. Lots of places in Europe and Asia, but honestly all over the world. Mexico City, Santiago, so many places. I'm so tired of not being able to travel. I'm almost at the bottom of the chat, and then I promise I will talk about moving and stuff. Los Angeles should have way better transit for sure. Would you be open to doing Cities Skylines gameplay videos with emphasis on public transport? That's an interesting idea for sure, though I don't have a gaming PC, and I'm not sure if it works on M1 Max, so maybe comment about that. What do you think of Dubai's future plans for transit? I made my kind of funny video about Dubai. Hey, Dubai has lots of money, so I think, the metro is actually not the worst thing in the world. I hope people took that video in jest, because obviously I'm a fan to at least to some extent, because yeah, it's an automated light metro and the stations look really nice and stuff. I think just keep building more metro and maybe do better buses. I think that's that's what I would say to so many different cities. Staying up way too late, I'll join you on your Euro-friendly stream. Look forward to talking to you again. Sounds good. Are there any cities that you think don't currently have great public transit that would be game changers if they really invested in it? Las Vegas. That's one I think would be... It would be so easy to serve with a high-capacity rail line too, right? You could have one single high-capacity rail line that ran straight from the airport, because Las Vegas is a massive tourist city, obviously, and also just the airport is easy to connect on a corridor that connects straight up the Las Vegas Strip, and then maybe to downtown Las Vegas and stuff. You could hit all of the major destinations, and Las Vegas is one of the few places in the world where a heavy transit system, just basically for tourists, but also tons of people work in all of the casinos and hotels, massive numbers of people. It would be a great place to do it. Wouldn't even necessarily need to be that heavy. It could be like a light metro. It could be elevated. Las Vegas Boulevard is very wide, and there are elevated bridges over it in large parts, so you could have direct connections into hotels. It could be really nice. 24-hour service. Do it like Copenhagen. It would be great. I actually was long planning doing a video on cities that should have better transit, or cities that really transit projects we should be doing that we just aren't even talking about. Las Vegas does have a BRT system, but it could do better. It could do more. And I think that surely there's a way to get the casinos to help pay for a proper rail solution. There's like some monorails, but they're so limited, and they kind of run around the backs of all of the development. Also, I should mention, of course, and someone will mention, Las Vegas is installing these silly car tunnels. But maybe, hey, Las Vegas will realize that was a silly mistake, and it will build rail instead, as it probably should have from the beginning. So yeah, what small cities do you think have the best transit systems? Well, Karlsruhe would be one for sure. I think like probably cities in Scandinavia. Is Victoria, BC ready for LRT? Probably not. I just do better buses. Maybe trolley buses could not be the worst. Not the worst place to do it because there's like cheap hydropower. You said it was affordable when talking about cars. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, in relation to living with or without a car. Thoughts on trams in Asia? There's not that many, to be honest, right? They exist, but there's not that many, and a lot of cities get by fine without them. What makes platform screen doors such a crucial addition on modern metro networks? I don't think they're crucial in the sense that doesn't Las Vegas already have a monorail? So yes, Vegas does have a monorail, and it could be extended to the airport. But I think of it this way: like the monorail is not that extensive right now. It goes up maybe like a third of the strip, and it's not the ideal alignment straight down Las Vegas Boulevard, with maybe a branch to the convention center because there are massive conventions all the time in Las Vegas, which doesn't need to be expensive. It's maybe a kilometer off the strip. But the strip is like where everyone is and where all the casinos and destinations are. So you want to put the alignment there. And also I should say thank you to Akbar for the super chat. It is appreciated. But you want to have the alignment on Las Vegas Boulevard. And once you start looking at how far you would have to extend that monorail to get down to the airport and stuff, you might as well just build a new line. Take a sip. So yeah, that's what I would say on that. Sorry. Yeah, that went down the wrong way. But yeah, like I think using a more standard rail system, like Copenhagen would make way more sense, and so I think the additional price would be worth it. So platform screen doors, they're great safety, but also speed of loading onto trains because people know where to line up. You can have air conditioning and heating. Just so many different reasons. The U.S. doesn't actually prioritize freight it doesn't. Like it's not supposed to. It does prioritize freight. What are your thoughts on the proposed Chicago-Toronto rail? As much as it would be, I would probably use it because I like riding trains. It's not going to be super fast, right? And so I don't think the amount of people who would use it would be that massive, especially because it won't be that many trains probably. Thoughts on diesel multiple units? I've mentioned before, I think they could be useful for lines like O-Train Line 1, where it's like a low cost, let's get it running, and once it gets popular, electrify better trains, etc. So they can be good, and maybe in places where wires are impractical, but also battery and hydrogen multiple units are becoming such an option that I think their time is running out. Best way to get from Western Toronto to Eastern Toronto without a car? Go Lakeshore Line for sure. Berry-UQAM is a great metro station for sure, but I wouldn't even say it's my favorite in Montreal. Leon Bruce, obviously fantastic. Are we going to get a worst of each transit example video? What do you mean by that? Do you mean like the worst BRT, worst LRT? If so, maybe. It's not a terrible idea. Also, you would love London. Oh, I do love London. Absolutely. It's fantastic. I've spent time there. I just want to spend more time there. What are your thoughts on park and rides? That's got to be its entire own video. Wow, that's a great video. I can't believe I haven't made a video that's just like, our park and ride's good. I'm literally going to call it that. Our park and ride's good. Also, if you're just coming to the stream now, which it's like over an hour into the stream, welcome to the stream. Next stream linked in the description down below. Consider supporting on Patreon and YouTube memberships to help me bring you more videos and do more transit stuff and remote transit systems around the world. I will say, and this is something I'm going to say more clearly in a future video, but people always ask me, are you going to make a transit video about this? Bangkok, this place, that place, The Hague, Manila, all of these places, I would love to do videos. And honestly, I don't really take requests. I've said this before, and that's because if I don't feel like it, I don't feel like it. I wait, and then someday I'll be like, oh yeah, I want to make a video there. Or I move around geographies. I try to spread out videos to cover different places. As long as the YouTube channel is doing well, as long as it makes sense for me to keep making videos, I'm gonna just keep doing more cities. So eventually I will get to city like Bangkok is a big city. The Hague is obviously a city that I have to cover because it's got super interesting transit. Tromsø in Norway. Like, I would love to cover all of these places, even getting down to tiny cities. It's really just a matter of the time it takes to make videos, and as long as YouTube is doing well, I'll keep going. Maybe I will do, at one point in the past, I had a thing where I had like a special Patreon tier where if you signed up for it, you could be like, okay, I want to commission a video. I want you to do a video about this city, and I would do a video about that city. Should I bring it back? Maybe I should bring it back. I don't know. But yeah. I also have to prioritize somewhat based on what's going to be interesting. Like, I'm from BC. Would I love to make a video about Victoria, BC? For sure. But would it get that much international viewership? Probably not, because it's a small city in Canada, right? And it doesn't have that much transit. Ironically, it's similar size to Karlsruhe, actually. But Karlsruhe's got something really unique going on with transit. So some cities are just less practical, right? Like, I'm going to make a video about London before I do a video about Victoria, BC. And so you have to understand that obviously kind of is part of it as well. But eventually, I've done a video on London, and so I will move to smaller cities, right? Yes, I have visited New York many times. I'm going to fly through the rest of these messages, and yes. Oh my goodness, a lot of messages. Okay. Front Ridge of Colorado is a perfect place for rail. Absolutely agree. Is there a website? Oh, and also, yeah, we have merch now. So, merch, linked on the channel. This is a sample, but yeah, it's comfortable. So if you want to support the channel, you don't want to do Patreon or YouTube memberships, or you just want a pretty comfortable hoodie, then that's a good option. Size seems normal. Like, I think I'm a medium or large. It fits well. They want customers to stay in their hotels. They don't want to share customers. I think it's kind of a silly rationale, though, because at the end of the day, what connects you to a hotel also, what maybe makes you leave one hotel makes you come to another. And so make your hotel better, and that's all you have to do, and people will be attracted to it. Manchester Metrolink is a place I will do at some point. It is 100% like, it's one of the cities that I will, like, there are cities that I'm not currently planning a video on. That doesn't mean I'm not going to make a video on. I don't think I'm currently planning a video on, like, Beijing, but I will make a video on Beijing, obviously. It's an important system. But Manchester is one that I have, like, planned actively. What does it take to get to a metro to 40 trains per hour? I actually have a video planned on how to design a metro for super high frequencies. Are you familiar with the Morgantown PRT? Are there any places where a similar system might work? We talked about PRT a bit in the last stream with Dr. Jonathan English, so maybe check that out. It's a niche technology. It can work in some places, but it's limited. Orlando is certainly another city that could do better, but I think it's so sprawling and it has a difficult geography. So you have to make a cohesive plan. Without a cohesive plan, it's difficult. Reece, what you sipping on tonight? The hot chocolate. Yeah. Do not disrespect. Musk. Yeah. Well, Elon Musk has created some good stuff. The car tunnel is not one of those things. Okay. How do I convince my local government to invest in transit? It's good for business, good for the people, improves quality of life. It's not to like. I'm almost down at these super chats. I see them. I'll get there quickly. Do what you want. We'll support you. Oh, thank you so much. What are your thoughts of transit routes that follow freeways? Did a video on that. It's like literally highways could be good for transit, so go check that out. High-speed rail tunnel between Spain and Morocco. Is it plausible? Spain and Morocco? I forget if Morocco is literally across the Mediterranean from Spain. Like, what is when you go across Gibraltar? There was definitely a tunnel between the Mediterranean and like between Spain and Africa, or between the Iberian Peninsula and Africa is definitely practical. But it probably won't happen in the short term, but it would be incredibly cool. But yeah, it's definitely doable. It would be expensive though. What are other North American cities other than Toronto and San Diego where one agency builds and designs transit roads while another runs transit? Oh, that's an interesting question. I'm not actually sure. I'd have to think about that. I talked about the following freeways thing. For the record, I loved Victoria, BC. It's a great city for sure. How do I convince my local government to invest in transit? Oh, get them to watch some of my videos maybe. But I think I already mentioned this, and I feel like that was a repeat message. Yeah, I think that, so Billy, thanks for the super chat. And as we're talking about building a park and ride, but not actually having a convenient bus route alternative, I think it's difficult. Like, I will talk about this in a park and ride video, but in some places it's certainly not practical to have a bus route, which is unfortunate. But I think you should at least provide high quality bike infrastructure. So 20 minutes doesn't sound to Blair. Well, maybe that will get better when they extend the line east, but there should be high quality bike infrastructure to get to stations. And it obviously shouldn't be, spend the money you're going to spend on park and rides on better bike infrastructure first, because bike infrastructure has so many more benefits and it's so much more useful all the time. Commuter car parks, especially, you're going to fill up in the morning and they're not very useful at night. And so they're not 24-hour infrastructure, whereas bike routes, people can use them whenever, and it's not just for commuting. And not that park and rides are, but they're just so much more useful for so many more different things. William says, the videos have been great lately as always. My partner said she loves the wall decoration. Thanks so much, and you should get one. And thanks for being a member. What is stopping New York City from running commuter trains through? Why can't something like an M8 train run, for example, Trenton to Port Washington or New Haven? Sticking with red lines. Nothing. There's no reason it can't. Except for silliness, let's say. I have asked this question myself. It is 100% possible, and it should be the goal, but it is a lack of vision, a lack of understanding of how important transit is. That's what's preventing that from happening. So yeah, it's super frustrating. Martin says, thank you so much. Thank you, Martin, for the super chat and for watching the stream. Are there any cities that you think should just rip it up and start over, such as places with infamously bad transit? Las Vegas, Detroit with the People Mover, Ottawa maybe, if it wasn't extending its line, or turn it into a REM style thing. Are there any cities that you, okay, sorry, I just answered that. Could you do a video about CBTC on the TTC? I don't think I'm going to do a video specific to the TTC, though CBTC has been working nicely, and I probably will do, this is like where TikTok makes sense. I'll do a TikTok of like two trains incredibly close together in the CBTC section. But yeah, I'll do a general video. But yeah, CBTC is great. I'm a huge supporter. Bridge proposal between Spain and Morocco, but a tunnel isn't feasible. Well, I think a tunnel would probably, a lot of things are feasible if there's enough money for it. So we'll see. Interesting. There is a passenger train tunnel between Spain and Morocco. The high-speed rail part only starts in Morocco, a bit further south from Tangier. Well, any agency from Italy, Sicily, and Tunisia. Yeah, all of it would be super interesting. Let's just say that. What is the best and worst thing about Metra? Probably going to have to be a video. Have you seen... I have not seen that video. Similarly, the PATH and the MTA should probably be just merged into the same agency. Yeah, probably. Well, there needs to be reorganization. Was reading about how Stockholm has a train station on Metro line has train station on a metro station on a train station. Very meta. Interesting. Not sure what you're referring to. At least I think Detroit has good bones with its inner city grid. Absolutely. Okay. Woo. Okay, I got to the bottom of the chat. Only took me an hour and 35 minutes. Oh my goodness. So am I moving? No, not immediately, but if you follow me on Twitter, you will have seen that, yeah, I'm not sure my long-term future is in Toronto, and that doesn't mean that I'm saying I'm moving anytime soon. But yeah, I'm definitely open to it. I've said it before, but yeah, if a great opportunity presents itself to move somewhere that has good transit, or at least has passable transit, but could have really good transit, that I could, go and advocate for better transit. If such an opportunity arises, I would seriously consider it. And I am seriously considering other places that I could potentially live in, because Toronto can be so frustrating sometimes. And there are other great cities, including in Canada, that I would love to live in, including one that speaks French primarily. So I have been studying French quite a bit as of late. Also, I'm noticing some weird banding on my camera view, but okay, that's fine. And so yeah, I'm considering, it's not in the next month, it's not in the next 6 months, but maybe in a year or 2 years, I am considering like a further move somewhere. And I'm open to a lot of different places, and so we will see what happens. And the world is such a weird place right now with jobs being remote, and obviously my job could move around pretty easily. But yeah, no, I'm seriously considering it, and so we'll see what happens. But yeah, and I think that it's important. Like, people should move. If people aren't happy with their city, vote with your feet. If change isn't happening, move to other cities. Because if say you have two cities and one invests in transit and another refuses to, you can advocate. But at some point, if the city is just refusing to build high quality transit, maybe it's time to move to another city that does have high quality transit. Because while it is really great to advocate, it's not necessarily your job to fix a city for it. A city's politicians and a city's population as a whole has to help push the city in the right direction. And if that's not happening, then yeah, move and be happy. Like, moving to more urban places from where I used to live in the suburbs is something that I'm incredibly happy about. And I would never complain to someone that, hey, like, why'd you move? The suburbs are not the place I want to live. So yeah, I totally support other people too, moving if you're not happy where you are, and try to be, there's always the grass is greener on the other side, but yeah, so that's my thinking on the move thing, and we'll see what happens, what comes up. But yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting opportunities. So yeah, maybe I'll be in Montreal. I think that would be really cool. Part of me wants to move to Montreal pretty badly, hence why I'm studying French. So we'll see what happens. Let me look at the chat and wrap things up. Yeah, Pittsburgh is not happening. I will say I am not moving to Pittsburgh. And that's not a diss on Pittsburgh, but, well, I mean, hey, I guess I could move to Pittsburgh, but that would require some really unique opportunity coming up. I will not be changing my channel to French language, but maybe I would do a French language video at some point. How's your German? It's not passable. Though in Germany there's a lot of English speakers, so maybe I would get by. I mean, I can learn some basic vocabulary in any language, but am I going to become fluent in German anytime soon? No. Again, no, I'm not moving to New York City. Though again, that is a place that with great opportunity, maybe it would happen. Winnipeg, Yellowknife, Regina, Thunder Bay, all of places that, again, it just depends on what happens. If Regina decided to build a light metro network, maybe I would move there. Or honestly, if a city did some just great urban design and made great public spaces, I would be willing to move there. Even a small town. Like, yeah, if Thunder Bay decided to become like a small European city and build bike lanes everywhere and build nice public plazas with beautiful paving stones, then I would be on the next train up there. Yeah, I guess the Canadian, I believe, would stop in Thunder Bay. What transit options are good for a smaller city? Yeah, Karlsruhe. I think tram train. I think for Kelowna, a tram train would be uniquely applicable because there are like old rail alignments, and you could connect up with all of the other cities in the Okanagan, like along, kind of work your way around the lake. So I think a tram train could be fantastic for the Okanagan. I don't agree that most places aren't dense enough. You need better feeders, right? Feeder buses. Look at Toronto. A lot of Toronto is incredibly low density, and yet there's still really good transit, right? It's about the service. How to make suburbs have transit instead of driving. I made a video once about this, so check out how to design suburbs for transit. I live in Pennsylvania. You don't want to live here. Do you like cats? Yes, and in fact, I have my cat has been featured in a video in the past. You can shift in London. Not sure what you're saying. London, Canada? Probably not. Australia would be convenient as it's English and transit is decent as well. The railways are certainly good. Yeah, the buses less so, but the railways are great. Australia is definitely a place I would consider moving. Yeah. I was actually at one point looking at some educational options in Australia, actually. Maybe I'll talk about that someday. Yeah. Brisbane is really nice. I've spent some time there. Brisbane was a city that I had a very special time in. Apart from the REM, what things make you want to move to Montreal? The metro is amazing, and the city is just, it's so great. It's a city that is, it has an energy to it that feels like London or Paris, that Toronto sadly doesn't feel like it has for me. Even if you just go on the metro stations, the scale of them is incredible, right? So it's awesome. But anywhere I move, honestly, at this point, it's not going to change the channel that much because I can make videos about anything. How do you feel about superblocks? Awesome. Have you seen the Cambridge Mass bike network and plan? It includes 25 miles of fully protected. I don't speak in miles. Yeah. I really have no conception of what a mile looks like, but it sounds good. Yeah, I'm a metric person. I have not, but yeah, if you want to send me stuff, always feel free. I might read it over. A tier list of cities you would like to live in. That's an interesting idea. To be fair, I don't love super hot, and 30 Celsius actually sounds more negative than positive. Sorry, Craig. I missed your super chat. Thanks for the super chat. Getting back for my last question, since he assumed the LA Metro was one that they built, if LA during the 80s and 90s had a choice, which should they pick? Proper Metro or European Suburban Rail? Suburban Rail, 100%. I think would make more sense. Though a system like the Washington Metro in LA could also be really good, because it's fast. It's basically kind of like European Suburban Rail, if I'm honest, just with less integration with mainline railways. Maybe so something like that could even be very good. I think it would be very popular because it would be fast. What do you think of the newly revealed MARTA rolling stock in Atlanta? It looks great. I actually tweeted about it. Another reason to follow me on Twitter, because when stuff like that happens, I might not always make a video, but I probably do tweet about it. And yeah, it looks very Statler, but it looks like it's going to be the best metro train in America, which I guess I kind of expected because Statler is fantastic. You guys does Statler want to sponsor my channel? Because that would be such a cool sponsor to have for the channel. Would you move outside of the Anglosphere? Yeah, no, 100% I would. I mean, I would say Montreal's not in the Anglosphere, right? I mean, yes, a lot of people do speak English, but a lot of people don't speak English as well. And also, it would not be my intention to be like in some English bubble in Montreal. But yeah, it makes it easier if the place is livable for an English speaker. So like, Japan becomes tricky. Also, Japan immigration is difficult. But yeah, I would definitely be willing to. I looked at Montreal and Vancouver for real, but my French is rusty, and Vancouver cost of living is so high, and it makes me sad. To be honest, in Canada, the difference in cost of living from city to city is less high than people think. Generally, I'm not saying in your case that is true, but like having lived in both, Toronto is expensive, but Vancouver's expensive, but Toronto is not much less expensive. Montreal is less expensive. San Juan, probably unlikely. Again, I'm not a person who loves heat that much, but who knows? Jakarta, again, heat. Does density matter when it comes to transit? Yes, but you don't need density. You don't need extremely high density, at least. I used to live in Sydney and recently moved to Illinois, and it really made me realize the importance of transit. That would do it. 1 mile equals 1.6 kilometers. Yes, I know, but still. Even though I consider myself decently good at mental math, I may have had a past job related to that. Still. Which city in Canada has the most aesthetically pleasing transit system? Montreal, for sure. Okay. What's your view of? Okay, not sure what you're referring to. What is your job? I'm a YouTuber. Yeah. I wouldn't say Montreal is in the Anglosphere. It's like, no, I wouldn't say so. Yes, Canada is a largely English-speaking country, but Montreal even is not overwhelmingly English. I wouldn't even, there's a sizable minority that speaks English, but there's a lot of Montrealers that don't. So yeah, I don't think that qualifies as Anglosphere. Do you think Winnipeg will have rail transit in our lifetime? I hope so. Move to Japan. That would be amazing, but I guess it's one of those things where it would have to be a really good opportunity. Have you had any interesting but weird experiences while riding transit? More than I can count, but probably most of them are not good to talk about on YouTube. Brisbane isn't great if you don't love heat. Type of place, where you're shirtless more than half the year. But I will be in Brisbane at some point. That is for sure. When travel is allowed again, I will be traveling around the world, and I hope to do meetups in different places. Montreal has apartments under $1,000, which is basically impossible to find in Vancouver. Yeah. Statler's is really great, and they are getting more and more popular in the US for all sorts of projects. Yeah, that's honestly fantastic, because Statler, someone described it to me as their trains are expensive, but you kind of get what you pay for, and that's cool with me. We spend a lot in North America. We might as well get great trains out of it. So someone else saying Montreal is not in the Anglosphere. The Belgian passenger rail company. Yeah, I'm not super familiar, though I did spend some time in Brussels, and I enjoyed the trams. And I will make a video about Brussels, talking about the pre-metro and stuff. You should know at least passing French when you visit. I definitely do. Is there a position that you're ultimately working for? I think my partner would be looking for a job, and so that would be an important consideration. But if, let's say a major transit agency was like, we want a new head of, public relations or, social media, I don't know. If there was an interesting job like that, I would be super interested. Or if, I don't know, you never, a lot of the times opportunities, you don't know what opportunities there are until you find out about them. Maybe there's an incredible new apartment block going up in some city right next to a metro station, and it's in a country where getting a visa is really easy, and all of these stars align, and you could move there, and that would be amazing. Kawasaki wants to know your location. Kawasaki is great. I love Japan, and I love Japanese rail manufacturers, because you know what? Even if the trains don't always look the way I wish they looked, they tend to be pretty good quality, and that's what matters. What do you think about Moscow? It's a cool city. On that note, do you think transit systems will try to prematurely remove CRRC rolling stock under construction, since they've been? I don't know. I can't really comment. I'm not really sure. There was a program for getting your stuff dry cleaned at Church Avenue Station on the F&G. Interesting. I don't know what the density of 1 square block in downtown Toronto is, and that makes me feel horrible. Definitely, like, I could Google it, but I don't know it. And I think that is, to be honest, one of the things about information in 2022 is the more Googleable, if I can say something is Googleable, the more easy something is to Google, the less likely it is I think I know it. And I think that would be the case for a lot of people. I live in the annex, so yeah, it's relatable. I guess I just kind of doxed myself, but yeah. If something is easy to Google, also thank you for the super chat, Jordan. It's appreciated. And also, yes, I would love to move to Montreal. It is really just, certain stars have to align, basically. What was I responding to? Yeah, but if you can Google something easily, I just don't remember it, right? Like, do I remember how many stations there are in Chicago? I think it's like 140 something, but I wouldn't remember the specific number because I don't feel a need to, because I can just Google it. Whereas something that isn't easy to Google in Chicago, relatively, is like, what is the origin of the train design of Chicago's trains, right? Or what was the order of construction of various lines? When things are harder to Google, and actually that means you probably actually have been exposed to that information less often, I feel like you remember them better. It's actually things you get exposed to a lot. Like, I'm constantly seeing there's 145 or something like that stations in Chicago, and that actually makes me forget it because I feel like it's everywhere. I don't need to remember it. So yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Looking in Port Authority website to see if we have a social media job. Can you make a video about SFU gondola lift proposal? Lift, as in the ride-sharing company? I'm a super big supporter of the SFU gondola. I have been for a long time, but I'm not sure what the lift proposal is. Please make more videos on Canadian high-speed rail line and metro projects. I make lots. I'll continue to. Do you think Canada should use Via Rail to provide more intercity S-Bahn style services? I don't know if I would say S-Bahn style services. Thoughts on Winnipeg's BRT line? Winnipeg should have something more than BRT, probably. Move to Ottawa. We need you, and we are bilingual. That is true. Yeah, Ottawa would... Hey, like, if I could live on line 2, I would seriously consider living in Ottawa. Living on line, I don't know. I would say one thing that frustrates me about Toronto is it feels like a city that has that New York element to it of not supporting its own. And that's not that I don't know tons of great people in Toronto and the like, but it's just that making videos with, let's say, the local transit agency, no matter how many times you reach out, they don't get back. Even if you may be a fairly big transit YouTuber at this point and you would love to make videos about your local transit agency because it matters to you and you want to help support your local transit agency, and no matter how hard you try, you can't. And your local politicians, you might reach out to them to talk to them about things like this, and it's just difficult, and you feel like your city doesn't really... you're trying to do something positive for your city and it feels difficult, and it's just one of the many frustrations I have with this city. So yeah, Ottawa is a temp. I will say I am 80% as tempted to move to Ottawa as to Montreal, even if just to be the Ottawa LRT, this is what we need to do to fix it person who's just constantly talking about, we need to do this to fix the Ottawa LRT, and also we need to electrify Ottawa LRT line 2 yesterday. So yeah, tempting. Thoughts on Chicago transit? I'll make a dedicated video, but Chicago, as I've said before, impressive infrastructure like Philadelphia, and it's just so sad that there's not more investment into making it a fantastic system, because it could be like, even just looking at a map today, Chicago looks like a great transit system, right? But there's so much lacking in the infrastructure and the trains, and it's a city that should be spending a ton of money on transit, like Toronto is, to modernize and and it is doing some, but it's just not doing enough. And build new lines, like build a circle line in Chicago would be amazing. Google is an extension of our brain, to be honest. Yeah. Have you seen AHCDF's renderings for future Blue Line stations? I have not, but please send them to me on like Twitter or something, because I would love to see them. I'd like to see you play Transport Fever 2. I love Transport Fever. It is awesome, but I do not have a computer that can play it right now. Why do you say that New York doesn't support our own? The MTA is its own big mess. I'm not really talking about the transit space. I'm talking more about like, like the artist thing or like the creator thing, like the whole, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere attitude in New York, where it's like New York is really rough, and yeah, like people in New York often don't support like locals as much, and that it has that reputation. And I would say that Toronto feels very much like that. Interesting that Tyson says he'd move back to Ottawa in a heartbeat. Tyson, this is a conversation we need to have. I'm very interested in your opinions on this, because that is very interesting to hear. I'm new to your channel. I really enjoy your videos. I wanted to ask you, how do you generate map animations? I know it says OpenStreetMap, but how do you animate, and where do you get data? Data and stuff, it's all from, I was going to say it's all from Google Maps. It's not. It's from, like, you kind of have to just Google systems, find out where the stations are, and that's how you find station locations. But what Google Maps is great for is finding out more. Many cities in the Western world, at least, have 3D view where you can, fly over their cities, and it is so fun to do. And so it's a great way to learn more about a city. Interesting thing, if you're here an hour and 56 minutes into the stream, kudos to you. Thank you so much for watching and for your support. It is appreciated so much. And so what I will say is, this is something that is such a casual thing to say, but like, if a city has 3D view on Google Maps, I probably know like 50% more about its transit system, because it's just so satisfying to explore in 3D view in Google Maps. And so, like, I don't talk about mainland Chinese cities a ton on my channel. I will tell you, the fact that there is not high quality Google Maps of mainland Chinese cities definitely hurts people's understanding of them in the Western world, because it's such a great way of exploring cities and their transit systems, right? Then again, Chinese cities are also changing constantly and much faster than other places. But I think it's an interesting thing to think about. If you could improve something on the REM, what would it be? Make it for 5-car trains. What does it take to plan a bus, or make it for 5-car? Just make it so that 5-car trains are an option in the future. Chicago L is a commuter rail system. It sometimes feels like it. Would you consider doing a video about successful feeder bus services to train stations? I feel like I've made it for Toronto. I feel like Toronto is the model for that. How do you convince rolling stock manufacturers to move to your city? And that's a hard one. I don't know if I have a clear answer. What's the best way to improve suburban rail in Melbourne? De-interlining and optimizing the infrastructure and service patterns. There's so much infrastructure in Melbourne, and I don't feel like Melbourne gets as much as it could out of it. Is there a website you recommend for making your own transit proposals? I'm not sure what you're referring to, but like maybe Google My Maps to draw maps, where would people log on? Where would people? I'm not sure what you're saying. Given the conditions of Montreal, should they go with a Euro style using mainline tracks, or should they take the Hong Kong MTR approach? More REMs and bigger for suburban rail. I think in North America, there's a big case to be made for that Hong Kong MTR approach, basically. Would you be making a video on Mumbai's transit systems? Someone reached out to me recently about it. Basically, just there's not a ton of media online that I can use easily that makes it hard to make more videos about India. So if someone has great pictures, that could change things. Yeah, Baidu Maps, but I don't think Baidu Maps has 3D view, and also it's not Google Maps, and I like Google Maps. But yeah, I don't think Baidu Maps has 3D view. So how do you build pride in your city and transit system? Well, these are really good questions, but we're about 2 hours into the stream. It's been a really long one, so I think I'm gonna end it here. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. It is super appreciated, and I hope to see you in the next stream in 2 weeks. Yeah, thanks for watching, and thanks for your support. Bye.